Hello, welcome into the Starcast Marks Studios. My name is Ryan. I'm the host of Starcast Marks, and this is the after game review for game number 52. Stars do pull out the win this afternoon on this matinee game, 4-2 against the Buffalo Sabres. I am here by myself today. Chris and James are both busy, so y'all are gonna have to be stuck with me. Apologize about that, but anyways, just a great game overall by the Dallas Stars. I do have some complaints, and we will get into that. But just some general overviews in this game tonight. Just absolutely, complete game. This kind of looked like a trap game again, like it was last Sunday when we lost. But however, the Stars do take care of business here this afternoon. Just to look at some of the storylines coming out of this game this afternoon. Obviously, one of the big ones is Michael Raffl taking care of business, getting the 2-goal game here today. And it's his first multi-goal game since March of 2016. So it's good to see some production from the bottom six there, which this podcast, me included, has been kind of critical of over the past couple of weeks. But nonetheless, it's good to see some production from them. There was a tweet that I just recently retweeted, and I believe it was from trying to remember if it was, I believe it was from Brian Ray. And Brian Ray actually mentioned that Jake Ottinger currently is 7-2-1, and he has some insane stats to back up that 7-2-1 record. Here it is. He has a 186 goals against average and a 939 save percentage. And, honestly, in my opinion, he looked a little off today, but he still had some really good saves when it was needed. I really think he probably wants that first goal back against Tage Thompson, but nonetheless, he's still good enough, and the Stars are able to get him enough goal support to get him the win. And I believe that was his 17th win of the season for Mr. Jake Ottinger. So the Minnesota kid is taking advantage of his opportunities here. And again, I'll go ahead and say this about Jake Ottinger. This guy started the season in the AHL. He started the season in the AHL, and he is arguably the Stars' number one goaltender. And he started the last 10 of 11 games. I think he started 7 in a row now. So it's fantastic what he's been able to do after coming up from the AHL. And he's really solidified that position for the Dallas Stars. And one of the big reasons why the Stars are even close in the race for a playoff spot, which we'll talk about here in a second, good news there too, is him. And he is a huge reason why the Dallas Stars are able to pick up points. In some games, he's standing on his head. There's some games where he's just making some timely, huge saves. And it's just great to see that Jake Ottinger is taking advantage of his time as a Dallas Star and as the number one goaltender. Anyways, another couple of storylines coming out of today's game. What I really did not like were two particular things. There was one thing that bothered me more than the other, but it's the power play. I don't know what the Stars need to do on the power play. I understand they got a goal on the power play, but in all reality, they didn't get anything on that power play other than the one shot, and it would have been an easily savable shot if Gurianov had not been there and tipped it. So I'm not sure what you need to do if you're Derek Laxdal, the assistant coach for the Dallas Stars, in order to fix the power play. It's your job. But some of the suggestions that I saw on Twitter, and again, we're fans, so our opinions don't really matter as much, but some of the opinions that I saw was, why not try Thomas Harley out there a little bit? He is an offensively gifted defenseman. He was on the number one power play unit down with the Texas Stars. So he could very easily, maybe even quarterback a power play, maybe give him a chance. Cause again, the Stars power play didn't look great tonight, but they did get the goal, but it's still not where it needs to be. And we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, especially recently, considering the Stars on the power play. They were top 5 in the league maybe about a month or month and a half ago, and now it looks like they're about to drop out of the top 15 and be in the bottom half of the league when it comes to power play, which is insane considering how well we've done on the power play towards the beginning of the season. And if we really are looking at the playoffs, which right now we are in a playoff spot, that's got to be an area of our game that that we have to improve on, because that's something that we're gonna have to rely on a lot in the playoffs. Especially, I mean, imagine if we were in the playoffs right now, we would be probably drawing against Colorado. And in order to beat Colorado, there's two things that have to happen. Ottinger has to stand on his head, and we have to take advantage of our opportunities when we have them. And those opportunities are included in power play opportunities. And if we don't take advantage of those power play opportunities, it would be a quick 4-game series, in my opinion. The Stars would lose all 4 games real quickly. So hopefully that's not the case. The Stars need to be better on the power play. Maybe give Thomas Harley a chance on the power play there. So let's go ahead and get into the goal summary for today's game, guys. So throughout the first period, especially the first 10 minutes, Dallas looked fantastic. The first 10 minutes, they did exactly what we've been asking them to do against these teams that are quote unquote inferior and lower in the standings than the Dallas Stars. And I'll say it again. I've complained about the Stars and the points that they've left on the board. I mean, they lost to Vancouver 6-3 early in the season. They lost 2 against Ottawa. Y'all have heard this whole spiel before. I mean, Montreal recently, Arizona even more recent. I mean, those games you have to win. And I was afraid with especially with last week's matinee, and we ended up losing that one, which we should have won against Arizona. I was afraid we weren't going to come out strong, but we did, and it was a good response by the Dallas Stars in the first 10 minutes. They were able to kind of wade the storm the Buffalo Sabres were from the Dallas Stars. But however, Dallas would get the first goal of the game. Michael Raffl from Roddick Faksa and Miro Heiskanen. Faksa is actually the one that takes the shot, and Raffl gets his stick on it. And it looked like a real easy save for Craig Anderson, the Sabres goaltender. But Raffl gets his stick on it, makes it a little bit more difficult for him to find it, and it's in the back of the net, 1-0 Stars, and a great start for the Dallas Stars. And that would be the only goal that would be scored in the first period. For the second half of the first period, it was a little bit more back and forth, a little bit more transition hockey. There were some odd man rushes both ways, but I definitely thought that they played well in the first period, and especially in that first 10 minutes, we could have easily been up 2-0, 3-0. And speaking of the first period, Jamie Benn had several opportunities in that first period to get a goal, and he was not able to take advantage of that. So, that kind of, I would put him on the same radar right now as Jason Robertson. Both of those guys right now are getting a ton of chances, and they're just not burying them like you hope they would. And again, Robertson, I don't even think he was on the score sheet today, if I remember correctly. No, yeah, Robertson doesn't even make it on the score sheet tonight, despite having several chances. So, anyways, that would end the first in the first period. They would take a 1-0 lead and going into the first intermission. But in the second period, Roope Hintz would get his 23rd of the year, and he now leads the Dallas Stars in goals. And he gets that from Joe Pavelski and Thomas Harley. Thomas Harley, that should be of note, that's his first career NHL point. It comes as a secondary assist on that Roope Hintz goal. And the Dallas Stars are up 2-0 in the second period. And, honestly, in the second period, just in general, while I'm thinking about it, it was definitely much more back and forth. And the Sabres, especially in the beginning, were getting a lot of pressure on the Dallas Stars. And I believe they actually forced the Stars to take a penalty early. Yes, it was. It was Jacob Peterson, and he was holding the stick against Cody Eakin. So Cody Eakin put them on the power play, and thank goodness nothing came of that. But still, they were pushing very, very hard there in the second period. The Sabres were. About 2 minutes later, after the Roope Hintz goal, however, Tage Thompson, who has been a huge revelation for the Buffalo Sabres this year, gets his 22nd of the year from Jeff Skinner and Mikael Samuelsson. And that first line for the Buffalo Sabres takes care of it. Honestly, I thought it was a weak shot, and I even put this on Twitter. I thought that would be a goal that Ottinger would want back, and that kind of led me to believe in today's game that Ottinger was not really on his game, because especially that goal, I would want that back if I was Jay Cottinger. But nonetheless, it's 2-1, so the Stars still have a 1-goal lead. And then going into the second half of the period, Michael Raffl would get his second of the game, his sixth of the season from Seguin and Radulov. So Radulov is getting on the board here, which is good to see. And Seguin is continuing to very quietly have a point per game production over the past 20-ish games. So it's good to see Tyler Seguin doing that too. But honestly, at that point, with the kind of pressure that the Buffalo Sabres were getting on the Dallas Stars, it was very good to see Michael Raffl get that goal, because that was a very huge goal for the Stars, and they would take a 2-goal lead going into the third period. Other things coming out of the second period, it was a more balanced period, if you ask me. Just watching both teams, the Sabres played better than they did in the first. They weren't dominated like they were in the first by the Dallas Stars, and the Stars. I'll get into that here at the end, and that'll be one of my talking points here of some negative Nancys. I guess I'm the negative Nancy of the podcast, because I'm always finding something that they could do better. But anyways, going into the third period, we'll finish this whole goal summary up real quick. The Stars would go on the power play for the second time in the game, and it was actually I believe it was a slashing call on Tage Thompson that caused that goal, but I don't remember. It was either Tage Thompson or the other. It was against Jeff Skinner, one of those two guys. Anyways, Dennis Gurianov would get a goal from a tip-in from Esa Lindell, who would take the shot, and Jamie Benn. So Jamie Benn does find himself on the score sheet again, and Gurianov would get a tip-in. But let me go ahead and talk about this again too, about the power play, because just in general, there was nothing going on that power play, and I was really hoping the Stars would go out and maybe do a little bit more with the power play in that regard, because they were really turtling in that third period. And I put this on Twitter. I'm like, please don't turtle, please. And yet they were still doing it for the most part. So the one shot that I think we got on that power play, I think that was the one shot. Dennis Gurianov tips it. It was going a mile high, but you know what? I'll take it. 4-1 Dallas Stars at that point. Later on in the second period, former Dallas Star, the Ginger Ninja, as Razor calls him, Cody Eakin would get his fourth of the year from Hague, and it was just kind of a net scramble play in front of Ottinger. It was probably something that Ottinger, again, would want back, but I still don't see how that went in. But either way, it would that would make the score for the Dallas Stars 4-2, and they would only have a 2-goal lead going in at that point. And that would be the pretty much the end of the game when it comes to goal summary. The Buffalo Sabres would pull their goaltender with about a minute and a half, minute 45 left, and nothing really came of it. However, the other thing is that I don't like, and we talk about this a lot, is the Stars 6-on-5 play is not very good. When they have a lead, if it's a 1-goal lead or a 2-goal lead, they typically, I don't even think they took a shot at the open net in the last 2 minutes there. And that could have been Michael Raffl. He could have gotten the hat trick there, but nonetheless, there was no shot at the net from anybody in the last 2 minutes. But here's some things I kind of want to get into when it comes to the Stars, and I'll do some of the negatives first before I get to some of the positives. Some of the negatives. And I actually thought this was hilarious, because I was thinking about this at the end of the first period, and before the second intermission started, Michelle actually came out, the rinkside reporter for the Dallas Stars, and she said that she talked to Rick Bowness, and Bowness said that he didn't like the fact that they were kind of getting hemmed in their own zone and they weren't doing a lot of board play. I would like to see the Stars get out a little bit better out of their own zone in the transition game. It was okay. And against the Buffalo Sabres, that's all it had to be. It just had to be okay in order for them to be okay in this game. But, against the better teams, if the better teams know you're just going to go up the boards and you're not going to really try harder to get it to go up, then they're just going to sit on the boards and they're just going to, clamp the boards off, and you're not going to get any opportunities to get out of your own zone. And Buffalo had several opportunities today and not just the first period, but the second and the third, where the Stars were hemmed in their own zone just because they couldn't get out of their own zone. And I mean, it wasn't a lot. I would say about 30% of the time they were turning the puck over and not getting out of their own zone. But 70% of the time it was good. And that was good enough in today's game. However, if you do that against Carolina, against Florida, Colorado, Toronto, any of these top teams in the NHL, you're not going to win the game because they're just going to turn it over. They're going to transition hockey, pass it straight to the slot. It's going to go in the back of our net. So that's something that needs to be fixed by the Dallas Stars over the course of the next week or so. Now, the other thing that I kind of wanted to point out was also the play of Jake Ottinger, and I didn't talk about it a ton at the beginning of this podcast, at the beginning of this episode, but Jake Ottinger was a little off tonight. I don't really blame him for the second one too much. The second one, I don't know how he could have seen that or anything, but I still don't know how that goal went in. But especially that first one, that very first goal, he would want back because I mean the defense was doing their job. All it was just a shot from the outside from the perimeter, and it just happened to slide underneath his pad. Not quite 5-hole, but definitely under I think it was the right pad when it went under him. So anyways, that was a negative thing out of tonight's game. And yet he still made, if you're looking on the positive side, he still made some, not monstrous saves like he did, like say against Colorado, but he still made some big saves where there was some 2-on-1 opportunities, some 3-on-2s, maybe some good opportunities, just general 5-on-5 where the Stars were hidden in their zone. And he came up and he made saves. And so maybe he wasn't all bad in today's game, but it was just a little rough from Jake Ottinger tonight. And again, this is relative because Ottinger has been so freaking good. And I'll say it again if I can find it. He's 7-2-1 in his last 10 starts. He has a 929 save percentage, I believe. I really need to pull this up so I don't say it wrong. It was Brian Ray who actually was the one who said it. A 939 save percentage, and a 1.86 goals against average. So, that's relative in all terms. So maybe that's not a real negative, but just the fact that Ottinger has been so hot lately, he just kind of had an off game today for his recent status of how he's been playing. So, but that's kind of a good and a bad thing. The fact that he was a little off today and the Stars were able to play really good defense in front of him. And they were also able to get enough goal support for him to where he could win the game by just giving up 2 goals. So that's kind of weird. That's kind of like a negative and a positive in the same light. So good for Jake Ottinger, and we'll see if he continues to be thrown in the net. Because if you're Rick Bowness, why take him out? Seriously, why take him out? And maybe just to give him a rest at this point, because I think he's played 7 or 8 in a row. So 7 or 8 in a row for him. So maybe give him a rest in the next game. I don't know. But he's young enough that he would be able to take up a huge load and just keep playing. And some goalies are like that, where they just play better when they're just consistently playing. And then if they have a bad game, then maybe give them a rest. But we'll see if Holtby maybe makes his way into the Stars lineup over the next week or so. But so let's look at some positives for today's game. The positive for today's game is, despite the power play being bad, they do get a power play goal. That is very important, and maybe that can get them some momentum going forward. And maybe that's just what they need to do on the power play is they just need to take shots from the point and look for deflections, look for greasy goals, because anything that's they're trying to do right now, it doesn't seem to be working on the power play. So it is good that they got a goal tonight or this afternoon on the power play, and hopefully that continues for Dallas as well. And this is probably the biggest positive coming out of this game is the Stars beat the Sabres today 4-2. And I'll just go ahead and read this tweet from Owen Newkirk, who is one of the radio post-game, pre-game guys for the Dallas Stars. But he writes, the Stars beat the Sabres 4-2, giving them 61 points through 52 games, which moves Dallas ahead of Edmonton and into the second wild card spot in the Western Conference standings. So they are officially in a playoff spot again. Now, what they have to do to keep this spot is they have to play consistently. And that was one of the things that I think even Brian Ray was talking about, just how inconsistent this team has been throughout the season. Losing games they shouldn't, winning games they shouldn't. And we just need to see them to be more consistent over the next 2 months. And if they're consistent over the next 2 months, they're going to be in the playoffs. And maybe they could even track down Nashville here, because let me pull up the standings here in the Western Conference. Unlike this Eastern Conference, which I don't know if you guys have seen the standings for the Eastern Conference, but it's insane. There is a 10-point gap between the second wild card spot in the East and then the next closest team, which is Columbus. Washington has 65 points, and then Columbus has 55. That's just insane. But in the West, it's much more closer than that. We are 3 points behind Nashville for the first wild card spot. So that's within striking distance if you're the Dallas Stars, and they have a game in hand. So we'll see what the Stars can do. Hopefully they can continue to pick up points over the course of the next 2 months as the season continues on. But again, Edmonton is right behind us. They have 61 points, and the only reason why we're ahead of them is because we have more regulation wins than they do. And then even behind them, Anaheim is only 2 points behind. Now, we have games in hand over Edmonton and Anaheim, but in order for those games in hand to count, we have to win those games. So, it's great that we have those games in hand, but we have to continue to win games and pick up points as we're going through. But that just shows you how close the race is in the West. There's about 3 or 4 teams that are within striking distance of that second wild card spot. And for the time being, the Stars are there. So hopefully the Stars can hold on to this spot, and we can continue to see the Stars picking up points over the next 2 months. Let me go ahead and look at some of the comments before we close this off tonight, this afternoon, guys. Brandon, hey, Brandon, how you doing, man? Thanks for listening to the show. We scored on a power play. Well, you know what that means. Everyone grab 2 of each animal and head for the border. The end is nigh. Especially right now, that might be the case. But again, the fact that we scored on the power play is very good. But the power play still did not look good tonight. So that needs to be a huge focus for the Stars over the next couple of days. I believe they have 2 days off before they play again. Yeah, they have Monday and Tuesday off, and they play again on Wednesday against the LA Kings. That'll be a very important game. But anyways, that's got to be much, much better than what it is right now. Cooper. Hey, Cooper. Hey, buddy. He's got a couple of comments here. Cody Eakin was main man for Buffalo. Cody Eakin did have a good game tonight for Buffalo, and there's got to be a couple more, a little bit of motivation for Cody Eakin since he's playing against one of his former teams. Alex Smith, thank you for listening, Alex. It can be tough as a goalie to get into a game when you only face a couple of shots in the first 15 minutes of the game. And yeah, that's a good point. We should point that out actually real quick, is the fact that the shots on goal kind of told the story of the game. So when you look at the shots on goal in today's game, if I can find them real quick. While I'm pulling these up, I do know within the first 10 minutes, the Stars had the first 10 shots on goal. So at one point, the shots on goal in the first period were 10 for the Dallas Stars and 0 for the Buffalo Sabres. But just to look at the shots on goal per period, it was 18-6 in the first period. So that tells you the story in the first period. It was 11-8 in favor of the Buffalo Sabres in the second period. So obviously the Sabres pushed back, and then the Stars went turtle mode, and the shots on goal in the third period were 23-5 in favor of the Buffalo Sabres. But again, a lot of those shots from Buffalo in the third period were from the outside. They were not of high danger chances, but again, they were still getting shots on net, which is not what you want if you're the Dallas Stars defense. So the final shots on goal in today's game were actually 40-31 in favor of the Buffalo Sabres. So once again, Jake Ottinger's facing 40 shots, and he played decent enough to win today's game. That's just my opinion, that he had a little bit of an off game. Alex Smith again, playing Otter in back-to-back nights, I think shows that they are planning on riding him as long as he is hot. Yes, and they definitely should. And do the same thing with Holtby. If Holtby gets hot and he starts playing really well, which we saw, previously this season, and he got the starts. So we've got 2 goalies who are doing pretty well. Holtby is just kind of sitting because Ottinger is just playing insane out of his mind right now, in general terms speaking. But yeah, ride him till he's hot. And I mean, if he comes up to the coach and says, "Coach, I'm tired, I need a break," then that's when you put Holtby in. But otherwise, ride Otter. And if the Stars do end up making the playoffs, they need to make that decision between Otter or Holtby and who's going to get the lion's share of the starts in the playoffs, because it's just way easier for a goalie to play in the playoffs if they know that they're going to get to start the next game. And for me, if you're asking me right now, that's Jake Ottinger. It's not Holtby, and it's nothing against Holtby. It's just Otter's just playing out of his mind. So, but anyways, Alex, again, power play was terrible. The one goal was a nice tip, but wasn't really a power play goal. Yep, you're very, very right on that, and we've talked about that a lot already in the episode today. Alex also, keep it up, man. You got a lot of good comments, so keep them coming. Alex also says Edmonton has more regulation wins. Okay, so I was wrong about that. I should double check that before I said that, but I thought they did. Stars are ahead because we have one less game played. So yeah, so at least for a while, it's good to have those games in hand. But again, you got to win those games in hand if that's going to be the case. And then Alex also says, also love the description of the stream. Sabres have not been above 500 since 2012. Has to be the most miserable fan base in the league. And agreed. I feel terrible for the Sabres. They've been rebuilding for a long time. I even forgot what I put in the description. What did I put? Against the real rebuilding since 1999 Buffalo Sabres. And that's not really a shot against them, but it's the truth. I feel bad for Sabres fans. Eventually, they will get out of this whole rebuilding, misery that they've been in for over a decade now. But I should do a huge shout out to them actually, because they had a good game today. They really did. They played well. It's just they just don't have the firepower to win games like Colorado does or Dallas does or any of these other teams that are winning. But the way that they played today, they don't have the talent, but they have the work ethic. And that reminds me a lot of the Detroit Red Wings last season, not 2 seasons ago, because 2 seasons ago, Detroit was terrible. But last season, Detroit, you couldn't just go into the game and expect to win. Even though they were a quote unquote bad team, they were still competitive in making sure that each team that they played earned those 2 points. And, they made the Stars earn those 2 points today. So, Alex, thanks for all the comments, man. A lot of good talks there. But we are going to go ahead and close this out for this afternoon's edition of AGR, the After Game Review. Once again, my name is Ryan, and I am the host of Starcast Stricker Marks. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Please make sure you go and use the promo code THPN the next time you go and use the DraftKings app. They are our sponsor for our podcast, the entire Hockey Podcast Network, and they allow us to do all of these things, and we get a little bit on the side as well. So we thank them for their support, and we look forward to the continued partnership with DraftKings. Anyways, guys, the Stars do win with a final score of 4-2 in today's game. I will be back with you guys again on Wednesday. We'll see if James and Chris can come along with us as well. But that's going to be it for us. We'll catch you guys again on the flip side, and we hope you guys have a fantastic morning, evening, whenever you're listening to this. Have a good afternoon.